So,
All right. Sully, whenever you're ready.
so
Great, Penny.
yeah, I just got a text from John Carl McGrady saying that the link he has took him to the October meeting or something.
I'll
Okay.
forward.
Maybe, yeah. Thank you.
Great. With that, my name is Brian Sullivan. I am going to call the Affordable Housing Trust meeting of Tuesday, December 16th to order. This meeting is being audio and video recorded. All votes, this is a hybrid meeting. All votes taken today will be done by roll call. With that, we'll just test members' microphones. Penny, we just heard from you. Mary Mack.
Here.
Forrest Bell.
Here.
Great. With that, I will look. Are there any to number 2, an approval of the agenda? Dylan, any edits, changes, or adjustments to the agenda?
Nope, all good.
Great. May I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mary. In a second.
I'll second.
Thank you, Forrest. Vote by roll. Penny Dye.
Aye.
Forrest Bell.
Aye.
Mary Mack.
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan's an aye. Item 3, announcement. As mentioned, this meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust is being audio and video recorded. Item 4, public comments for items not on the agenda. Christy Ferrantella. We can't hear you, Christy. Still can't hear you. Christy, I'm going to wait for you to figure that out. I think, where is it? Teal, did you have a question or a comment or a public comment? I saw you go off mic.
I did. Hi, everyone.
Awesome.
Thank you. I'm Teal Beal. It's nice
Welcome.
to see everyone. I have a question regarding the year-round deed restriction program. It said on the RFP that the awards were to be given out actually yesterday. And just a general question, I do know that one of the stipulations on the RFP was that we don't really reach out to anybody to sort of ask about it or we would be disqualified. My general question is, how will one know or be notified if they've been accepted or not accepted, updated, that type of thing?
Thank you, Teal. It's a great question that I don't have the answer to. I'm going to turn to staff. Do we need to bring this answer back at a future meeting, or is this something we can address now?
Christy, is your microphone working? I can respond if it's not working.
Christy's mic is not working.
It's not working. Okay,
No.
so thank you for the question, Teal. We are going to be re-releasing the request for proposals because of a minor issue on our end with the finance. So we'll be re-releasing that, and the awards will be going out at a later date. So more information will be forthcoming.
Okay, will we get some sort of answer on the RFP if we've already put all of our information in?
Yes.
Okay, so how will that come to someone? If, say, myself, if I'm accepted, it'll come on the open procurement
Through
thing
OpenGov,
that I
OpenGov
did
website.
on the website.
For now, we're gonna huddle up internally and we'll get back to you on how you're gonna hear from that. But staff will make sure that you get more information on that.
Because and sort of as a second part to that, if someone doesn't qualify or didn't do all the paperwork correctly, will there be an opportunity to have discussion with the procurement officer as to sort of what went wrong, what we may have done incorrectly, that type of thing, in case we want to reapply at the next RFP?
Yeah. So if your
Sorry,
application
can I just interrupt because this is a public procurement?
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a microphone working now, and apologize for that. So Teal, everything through this is being handled through the procurement office. So
Okay.
you submitted through the first round, which is being reviewed. If there was anything missing, you would have been notified. They've already
Okay.
gone through everything and notified people if they were missing any documents. The committee has been selected and needs to review, and then you'll hear from everything will be through the procurement office. So they will be in touch shortly. What Dylan mentioned was my public comment that I couldn't unmute for, which was there was a part in the original RFP that asked for proof of ownership. So people who are looking to use this as down payment assistance were actually excluded, and that was not the intent of the procurement. So it's going to be
Okay.
re-released on Friday through the procurement office. So anybody who is interested in participating and maybe didn't apply because they thought they were excluded, or if they applied and didn't have a proof of ownership because they were looking for down payment assistance, we're encouraging to reapply through the second round. But I just want to be clear that the first round is still being reviewed, and it was through that evaluation that we realized that missing criteria around down payment assistance. So everything will be handled through Cindy Sue at the procurement office.
Okay. So say that they say, too bad, so sad to you. We're not going to do this for you. Would I or anyone have the opportunity to then sit down with a procurement person to sort of review where something may or may not have gone wrong? Do we get a letter saying, no, we're not, you don't qualify? How does that work?
Yeah, so all of the review will be through a public process. It'll be an open meeting where
Okay.
everything will be evaluated in public, and then all the letters and everything, that all of that is a public process. So you can ask questions and everything.
Okay. So we'll be notified when that meeting will be?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. I
Thank
appreciate you. Penny, sorry, were you wanting to?
No, that's okay. I'm trying to get the chair's
Okay.
attention.
Okay,
All right.
thank you, Teal. Christy,
Thank
did
you.
you're very welcome, Teal. Christy, are you good on that announcement? Do you feel that covered what you wanted?
Yes, that
Okay.
covered.
Perfect. Penny,
Yeah, I have a couple of follow-up questions. Will the people who have already applied that are in this first batch need to reapply, is my first question. Second to that is, if that's the case, well, for anybody, what is the deadline for receipt? And what is the date for a decision?
Through you, Chair. So
thank you.
I just want to be a little bit careful that we're not talking about a subject that wasn't anticipated on the agenda, but just to clarify, we can release a lot of information after this meeting. But people who've already applied who are still being evaluated do not need to reapply. Anybody who received a rejection letter would need to reapply.
Do we have a date for that yet?
Yes, and it's going to be released on Friday, and the due date is going to be January 28th.
And then a decision date, do we have that date yet?
That'll be within 30 days.
30 days of 12/19? No, 30 days of 28.
January 28th, so by the end of February.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then sorry, through you, Chair Sullivan, I just wanted to say the town has 2 postings for today, which may be why John Carl was hitting the wrong link. So I've sent a message to Maureen Coleman, but the second link is the correct one with the right Zoom link.
Somebody need to open that one and monitor it, or? No? Okay. And I see John made it into this meeting. Okay, so any other new public comment? Seeing none, I'll close public comment. Item 5, approval of minutes of December 2nd. Are there any edits, changes, comments, or would someone like to make a motion on the minutes from December 2nd?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of December 2nd, 2025.
Thank you, Penny. I'll note
Oh.
Abby just came into the meeting. Hi, Abby.
Hi, I'll second the motion.
Love that bit.
I'm sorry, I was on, I just wasn't on camera. I was eating.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Let's see. Okay, so I have motion to approve, second from Abby by roll call. Forrest Bell,
Aye.
Mary Mack,
I'm going to abstain.
Abby De Molina,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
Brian Sullivan's and I. Item 6. Oh, this is an exciting item on the agenda. Gift donation acceptances. Elizabeth Almodovar. Can I turn to staff to elaborate here?
Yes, through you, Chair Sullivan. We received a gift from Elizabeth Almodovar to do work in relation to the Tacoma Green closing. And so I would request that the board accept this gift and direct staff to write a letter of thanks.
Wow, that's really sweet. So you're looking for that motion to accept the gift and a letter of thanks. Anyone prepared to make that motion?
I'll make the motion, a motion to accept the gift and to authorize staff to write a letter of thanks.
Great, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mary. By roll call, Penny Dye,
Aye.
Forrest Bell,
Aye.
Abby De Molina,
Aye.
Mary Mack. Mary, one more time. I didn't.
Aye.
Thank you. And Brian Sullivan's and I. Item 7, review of 2021 housing production plan certification and request to the Executive Office of Housing Livable Communities for Safe Harbor. Okay. Christy, to you or our esteemed guest, Judy?
I think it's Christie.
I can actually take this one if that's okay.
Oh, there you go, Dylan.
Thank you.
I didn't mean to leave you out of that.
That's okay.
Right.
So the Executive Office of Housing Livable Communities, EOHLC, responded to our November letter requesting certification for Meadows 1, which is 28 units, 28 units, Habitat for Humanity Development on Waite Drive, which is 2 units, and Sandpiper Place 1, which is 1 unit. They responded on December 2nd and approved our request for certification, adding, so that total would be 31 additional units, which is 1%. So as we discussed last time, we're at 7% on the shy list, and we are officially extended. Our safe harbor is officially extended through October 31st, 2026.
Thank you, Dylan, for the update. Any discussion? No, thank you all for the hard work on that. Moving to item 8, discussion regarding expansion of income restriction limit to 250 area median income under the seasonal communities designation. Dylan, do you want to open?
Yeah, so the draft regulations for the Seasonal Communities Act allows designated communities to expand their attainable housing threshold to 250% of area median income. For reference, for a family of 4, that would be $408,750. So we wanted to bring this forward to the trust to begin getting a sense of whether or not, that's something you would be interested in expanding our attainable housing definition to align with that 250%.
Thanks, Dylan. I'll open to members for discussion. Penny?
Yeah, I just am wondering, is there any reason not to do this?
Editing some forms?
Yeah, right?
Like,
Through you, Chair Sullivan. I was gonna say, I don't see a reason not to expand. It's just, we would need to know to have this on the warrant to amend our declaration of trust. So we just need to have a sense of the meeting from the trust members to know if we should put forth that work.
Just a quick follow-up. I would hate to see somebody, I mean, we've got the 240 already. I would hate to see somebody disqualified because we didn't do this for that 10% differential. So if there are no other comments, I'll make a motion that we approve this.
Is there other discussion, or does anybody want to make a second on Penny's motion for approval of raising the AMI limit to 250%?
Second.
Okay, I think that was either Mary or Abby.
I think it was Mary.
Great, thank you, Mary. Any continued discussion? Seeing none, Abby De Molina,
Aye.
Mary Mack,
Aye.
Boris Bell,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
I
and Brian Sullivan's and I. Thank you for bringing that to us and in seasonal communities. Item 9, recap of joint meeting with Select Board, Planning Board, Board of Health from Judy. Oh, great. Floor is yours.
Can you all hear me?
We can hear you, but we need to, there it is. Okay.
So I'm so sad because I thought you were all gonna be here. Not playing guilt trip on you or anything. Haven't seen some of you for a long time. Yeah, I think what you kind of wanted to get was a little bit of like the summary of what came out of that meeting. Is that my understanding?
Please.
Yeah, so I was looking back at the notes on this again this morning, and I think one of the things that I would sort of look at these from the standpoint of what kind of generated the most discussion. And I think the discussion around just the difficulty of getting anything approved in Nantucket probably was more of the conversation, just in terms of the amount of time than anything else. And people had a lot to say about that, just how hard it is to A, get anything approved, and B, how complicated permitting has become here. I don't have a sense that there's a big appetite to do something about that, but that was certainly a big part of the conversation. And then also, as part of that, not only is it just sort of difficult for people to know how to get something approved or get all the permits that are required for a project, but I think a related concern is the communication between the boards that have a role to play in development. Is that communication effective? Is it working? Is it even happening? Are people on the same page? And it's hard for me to divorce myself from what I heard in the meeting and what I see in my other work in Nantucket. I don't get a sense that there's a big appetite here to fix the problem of how complicated it is to get anything approved. But that was certainly a big part of the discussion. We had asked at the beginning of the meeting for people to just talk a bit about what they value or care about in housing. And the reason we asked that question was to try to find out, well, if you have to make a decision between competing problems or challenges, how would you come about making that decision? What are the things that would actually drive you to go in one direction or another? And that discussion it was pretty far reaching. People talked a lot about really caring about homeownership opportunities and the importance of providing for homeownership in a community if it's going to actually be a community that achieve over the long run. There was quite a bit of discussion during that item and then later in the meeting as well about property values and some tension in the room, not a lot, but enough that it was palpable, at least obvious to me, between do we just recognize that people's property value is something that they really should be able to maximize and get something out of versus do our regulations in some way contribute to creating values that are so out of sight that nobody can really afford to live here. And I think, Brian, if I'm not mistaken, that was part of the conversation where you or someone else had raised concerns about overoccupied housing. I don't know if you remember that, but that definitely came up. And it was resonant for me because frankly, for the 10 or 11 years I've been working in Nantucket, it is one of the concerns I have a lot of concern about, and I don't see much appetite to do anything about it. So that was part of the discussion. Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, when just to clarify, you're meaning the summary on overoccupied housing, as far as non-appetited on addressing.
Yeah, I mean, we've actually been asked, not by anybody in this room or on the screen, but we've actually been asked to just not go there. And I find it really disturbing. So that was part of the discussion is of what do we do about overoccupied housing and to what extent does that contribute to some of the very high property value / rent problems that we deal with in Nantucket. There was a discussion as well about sort of what are the needs you want to address going forward. That discussion was a little bit troubling to me because it was a lot of the discussion was around, well, we've sort of done a lot to address the subsidized housing inventory, which clearly Nantucket has done. It's why you've just got another housing certification again. So we need to be focusing on other issues. And I don't disagree that that is a challenge here is when you're talking about setting your attainable housing threshold at 250% of median income. It's very clear that people have concerns above and beyond the sort of 80% of AMI standard that sort of determines what's eligible for the subsidized housing inventory. But from where we sit, looking at the demographics of the island, it's like there's a tremendous need here for very low income housing. And so this isn't just a Nantucket issue, but I think it's pronounced here. There's a big difference between chasing 10% under the subsidized housing inventory and addressing housing needs. They are not the same. So I would encourage all of you, especially after the discussion we heard at the summit, to divorce those two topics. Managing 40B is one thing, addressing housing needs is another. So that was a discussion that took, a fair amount of lively exchange in the meeting as well. I think the sort of the defining housing need and where do we go from here? How do we deal with this beast of the permitting process? And what are the things that the variety of things that contribute to housing prices here, and what things can we actually control? Those were sort of dominant pieces, I think, of the discussion. And then we asked at the end, so what opportunities do you see going forward under any of the sort of processes or agenda or programs that are out there now or emerging? And that conversation was probably not quite as productive as I'd hoped, but I think there was a lot of hope, which I certainly respect and understand, about the ability to affect year-round housing in the community between seasonal communities and then also the pilot program, which may turn into a permanent program in terms of buying down restrictions, a la the Vail and Deed program. So that was, that's probably the most salient points I think came out of the meeting. Some of you were there, so you may remember some things that I'm just glossing over or forgetting right now, but I will say this. I think the sad thing to me about that meeting, and it was obvious almost right away, was that we didn't include the Historic District Commission. And I think that conversation really needs to happen soon. So when we do another one of these, if we do another one, I think you got to broaden the pool, and I think you need to get the Historic District Commission in the room with all of you.
I like the HDC idea. I think that's been contemplated in the past. Go ahead, Dylan.
I was going to mention this later during the staff update, but we've started putting together as part of the follow-up tasks, starting to think about when the date would be for the next joint session, including reaching out to Holly back as the town's preservation planner and the chair of the HDC to make sure that they're included in the next joint meeting.
And we had a follow-up call, just to be clear, it was Libby, Leslie, Christy, and I. I think there was some sense of trying to do this again after town meeting. I don't know what you have going to town meeting in the spring, but I'm not sure you want to wait that long.
Go ahead, Dylan.
So we've been eyeing the end of March, which would be before.
Yeah, I think that really would make a lot of sense. I mean, it's pretty obvious to me. You had some really nice, lovely people in that room who clearly don't talk, and it's not necessarily because people don't want to. You're just not all together. At a time that actually you could resolve some common issues.
I would agree with that. So I attended the meeting, and just some comments on your summary. I thought that it was great to have everybody in the same space to articulate where they run into roadblocks and challenges, and to see paths. Most of the conversation happened through members of boards and committees and not necessarily staff, which already has, from my outside looking in, a good level of communication on an ongoing basis, but was an opportunity, for board members to, kind of deliver their perceived issues. Whether it's permitting is clearly something that makes everything more expensive on Nantucket, and it's the expectation of many of these boards to see professionals and not homeowners, which hiring professionals makes everything more expensive, whether it's an engineer or an architect or a land surveyor or whatever those cases are. So how do we, improve those processes? Inter-board communication in moving through approvals. I think that was well identified, and staff communicating well. For me personally, I've been spending a lot of time thinking about over occupancy is effectively a subsidy in the high rising cost of rental rates on the island, which thus drives up sales prices. So how does that, it's a very touchy subject because some people will be displaced in addressing over occupancy. And so how do we work through that pain point as a community to then get to a place where pricing normalizes to where it should be and over occupancy doesn't exist? And are we ready for that? It's a hard conversation to have, but it's one we probably should. Or other interesting points there. I look forward to having that meeting again on a regular basis.
Oh, I think you're right. Am I forgetting anything else that Swampy was saying?
I know that there, I mean, this is related, but there seemed to be appetite for whether it occurs through this same meeting or kind of a different type of meeting for kind of a pre-town meeting. This is what we as town staff and boards and committees are kind of pushing forward at town meeting, so that there is, a so-called united front from the town perspective. So that way, when it gets met by the public, people seem to be on the same page. But it's related, and it could happen through that same meeting.
Penny?
Yeah, I have to say, I felt that the folks from the Board of Health were kind of it seemed like they weren't sure of what their role was in that meeting. And that's just an observation. If there's a way to better engage people, I'm not sure what it is. But that was just one of my observations.
Can I comment on that?
Please.
Yeah, because I agree, Penny. I think part of the issue was before that meeting happened, we scheduled a meeting with the chair and associated staff person for each participating board. And the Board of Health conversation just didn't happen. It was scheduled, but it didn't happen. So I think the board members kind of came in not really sure what they were supposed to do. I'm not sure what was communicated to them.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Judy on that, Mary?
I was at that meeting too, and although I have very little experience, and it was really the first meeting I had been to with all these members of different boards. And I loathe to bring this up kind of because I feel like it might be looked at as silly, but there's just, there was just so much tension. And I'm kind of like a hyper-vigilant person, and my antennae is kind of sensitive to that, but it was a lot. And I'm thinking that maybe before another one of those, if it could be an in-person meeting and we could all play a game of Pictionary before. And it may sound silly, but it might loosen everybody up and do different teams that are not, they're on the same team and they don't agree with each other, say. And I don't know, it's just an idea to just loosen everybody up and then start the meeting on that kind of a meeting like we had, I think it was in September, that we're all talking about. And then invite the land bank too. So that's my thing.
Thank you, Mary. Penny, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, I agree with what Mary says about the tension. We had that meeting as we were heading into a very contentious special town meeting, and some of the people that were in attendance were making sweeping statements that were unsubstantiated about certain things that we were going to be voting on and discussing at the town meeting, and that contributed to the tension. Thank you.
Any other comments or commentary? So I'd just be curious if staff hears, on the radar of another future meeting coming together, and some of the feedbacks and recommendations from Mary and Penny and Judy, kind of moving forward. So thank you all. Jumping back into, let's see, the agenda, just recap 10. Staff update?
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen. Oh, you know what? Can you put the agenda up? Can you pull it up? Caroline's going to pull up the agenda, but I will start taking us through the staff update while we do this. While Caroline does that. So the first, I want to take everybody through the grants and loans update. Give me 1 second. I'm going to join the meeting from my computer. Christy, you don't have it up and available to share?
No, I had the tech issue, so I'm on my cell phone.
All right, I'll be on in 1 second. All right. So the first is that for the last year, at least the locals, nearly 100%, a little over 98% of the funds have been spent to date. I believe there's a little over $2,000 left. And so any of the remaining funds that Housing Nantucket has will be, any of the remaining money that has not yet been dispersed to Housing Nantucket will not and will stay with the trust to be utilized. Any money that had been sent to them to send incentives for lease locals incentives for the back end of the lease will also be returned to the trust so that it can be utilized in the upcoming year of lease to locals for those tenants. As you all know, in November, the select board approved awarding the administrator contract to Placemate, and tomorrow the select board is reviewing your approval of $550,000 for the coming year of lease to locals. For Habitat for Humanity, nearly 72% of grant funds have been expended to date on the work they're doing on Lake Drive. And exciting update for Tacoma Green, they pulled their building permits last week on Thursday, December 11th. And you all and the select board approved the closing documents at the December 10th meeting. So we will be submitting a request to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities for HPP certification there.
Dylan, quick question on that.
Yes.
Those units are counted already or not counted in the current list?
Tacoma Green,
Correct.
they are not counted yet. So when
Okay.
the 64 are added, that will be another 2. Or sorry, yeah, they're not counted yet. So when they're added, yeah, it'll continue to add.
Thank you.
Yeah. As we talked about at the start of the meeting, with the addition of Meadows 1 and the Habitat and Sandpiper Place units, we're now at 7% on our shy list. We've added 31 units to the shy list this year. Again, they pulled the building permits. When that's added, we'll be at 8%. The 64 will get us to 8%. I'm kind of just repeating myself at this point. They're going to be, we're submitting the letter for the additional certification. For the RFPs and RFQ updates, the request for proposals and requests for qualifications, we released, this is what we were speaking about during public comment at the start. We've released the RFP for the year-round deed restriction program. We received 6 responses, but of those 6, only 4 met the minimum criteria. So I won't, since we've already talked about this so robustly, I won't get too deep into that. But they will be re-releasing the RFP to encourage more participants. But as we discussed, if you applied, you do not need to reapply yet. The students from Worcester Polytechnic Institute came and presented to us last week, and then they shared, at our last meeting on December 2nd, and they shared a final presentation on December 9th. They have sent their final written report to staff, and we're reviewing, and if anybody's interested, we can share that around. We are continuing to work on the rental preservation program with Placemate. I'm going to talk more about that after the staff update, so I'm going to hold on to that for now. In terms of the joint planning session coordination, another thing that we've already talked about today, obviously Judy and Laurel are here and shared an update, and we're beginning to plan a follow-up meeting for March, and we have a list of follow-up items for staff and board members that we will be working on too. Short update on the good landlord tax exemption this week. At the end of November, the select board gave their approval to have town council begin to draft a warrant article for the good landlord tax exemption. So we're beginning to work with town council there. And as many of you know, and I think participated, we're excited to have Judy and her team from Barrett Planning on Island to kick off the stakeholder interviews today. Some happening yesterday and some are happening today. They're continuing to work with us to make progress on their engagement plan. And we have sent those materials over to the communications office to have a website set up on our engagement space so that the public can access the materials there. And then lastly, just a communication update. As always, we're continuing to work with Jess and Flo and communications to make sure that we're putting things out to the community and they can see all of the work that we're doing and that you guys are doing and all of the progress that we are making. We did have been running some local ads and putting things out through social media. So our Why Affordable Housing Matters advertising drive that started in October received on the town social media nearly 4,000 views, 13 likes. So hopefully we can get our likes up there a bit, and 2 shares. Full disclosure, I think one of those shares was probably me. And then the reposting of those to their social media story got almost an additional 1,000 views. And we don't have the analytics from places like The Current or Inky where we sent out the advertising, but we've spent a few $1,000s there to try and get that out into the community. And then next. Sorry, this is actually the last update. So we've updated the our funding spreadsheet, which hopefully folks got a chance to look through. But as you can see, we have expended of the just over $150 million that has been appropriated since 2019. We've spent just under 83 million, and we are anticipating spending about 40 million additional for things like closing cost assistance, construction and development subsidies, home ownership. Oh, so this would be Tacoma Green, and housing recycling programs. And of that money, we're anticipating. So given that we have about 30 million on hand, but we're anticipating, through the loans, about 20 million coming back to us. So we'll have about 50 million, a little over 50 million.
Dylan, quick question for you, on a future update where it anticipated repayment, can you note the timeline for those? So
Yeah.
It's just understood, like, it's nice to know that the dollars recycle through, but what are those are 10 years, what are those are 40 years, what are those are 50? So it's just understood as we're looking at the revolving cycle.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'm going to talk a little bit more, I think, about things that are pertinent to the funds in the next under other business, but through you, Chair Sullivan, if there's anything else, I'd be happy to answer any of the trust members' questions.
Looking for any questions? Seeing none. I can't see all the members with the shared screen view. So Caroline or Dylan, if you see anybody.
No hands raised right now.
Okay. So with that, we will close this item and go to board comments. Is that right?
Yep.
Any members of the board have commentary not on the agenda? Happy holidays, everybody. Moving on to other business. Item 1, not anticipated on the agenda. Review of budget scenarios for a year-round rental preservation study guidelines discussion. Dylan, I'm going to come back to you to lead this.
Yes. All right. So I'm going to share my screen again. Wait for it to come up. All right. So as you know, we've been working with the folks at Placemate on a rental preservation program study to help us put together guidelines for a rental preservation incentive. They presented to us at the December 2nd meeting. I just want to go through, some of the things that we've continued to talk to them about and hopefully get your feedback on a lot of that stuff. So the first is we've kind of fleshed out the program guardrails. So I just want to walk us through that. Staff's recommendation would be that to qualify, they have to have an existing year-round rental for at least the prior 12 months. We define the year-round rental to align with the year-round deed restriction program, which would be, somebody who's living in that property for 10 out of the prior 12 months. To maximize the breadth of impact, we'd recommend limiting eligibility to one property per ownership group, and then giving priority to properties who are renting below 100% area median income. To provide flexibility for the homeowners, we would in this program allow a 5% annual increase in rent, but not beyond that. And then the payments, as you can see here, incentives will be paid in 4 installments over 3 years and increase over time to encourage participation. So the recommendation would be to do 15%, and I'm going to get into specific numbers in a second, but it would be 15% at basically year 0, 15% at year 1. So over the course of year 1, you're getting 30% total, 30% at the end of year 2, and then 40% at the end of year 3. So this would be, in Colin's words, sort of dangling the carrot for the commitment over time. Um, and then we've also, sort of worked with them to come up with what would be considered a qualified tenant. So year-round employee working at least 30 hours per week, over 1,500 hours per year for an employer based on Nantucket, or with a physical location on the island, with exceptions for education providers, active community members, and persons with disabilities, which also aligns with the guidelines of the year-round deed restriction program. Is the idea there. And then, if it's okay with you, Chair Sullivan, maybe if I just stop there for any questions. I think this is all stuff that the trust has heard from Colin before, but I just want to stop there before diving in.
Penny.
I believe
All right,
Penny.
Penny.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to Dylan, how is that 5% determined? That seems kind of high to me, given that it's going to be compounded.
Right.
So it would be, they'd have to.
Hmm?
They'd have to. So they'd have the existing lease, right? They'd have to be renting for at least 12 months prior,
Yeah.
and they'd have to be renting at a rate, an affordable rate already. So the 5% would be for the second year in the program, based on what they were renting at before.
Yeah,
But,
I understand. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
but I was going to say, I think this is why we're bringing it forward. If you and the trust think that 5% is too high, there's no problem bringing that back.
I think it's exceedingly too high. The CPI has been running around 3.5% for the last few years.
Okay.
And I just think that's very high, especially for an affordable program. Just my 2 cents. I think it should be closer to 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. Christy?
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. Just to kind of piggyback off of that, this came up last year with the Lease to Locals program and what might be feasible. And one thing that we put in there that we could put in this language as well is, a 3% increase unless you can prove some other reason. And one thing that came across with the Lease to Locals was people's taxes or insurance were going up, and that was going up a lot more than 3%. And so they were needing to have a little bit more room to increase rent just to cover the basic operations of their house. So we'd like to have at least some flexibility that people don't want to not commit to something because they're nervous of other things going up. So maybe it's a 3% plus some way to have a review with staff if it needs to be above that.
Any follow-up on that?
Am I going to follow up on that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think to have something going higher than the open market is not. It just doesn't feel like it fits the what we're trying to do here. That's all. So.
Okay. Go ahead, Dylan.
I just to clarify, it wouldn't have to increase by 5%. It would just be allowable up to, right? This is just setting the maximum at what the annual increase could be. So it couldn't exceed that.
But for you, Mr. Chair, if it could be, it will, I think that's
Yeah. If it can, it goes to the max. And then I guess the question is, in real dollars, what's the percentage we're talking about at 100% AMI on a year over year? So what's the 5-year change in real dollars? So I guess that would be my question, Dylan. Because I do recognize there are some instances, specifically with like insurance lately, that it's hard to make the catch up because insurance rates are traveling at faster than CPI increases. So I think it's good to have a review opportunity, but to your point, Penny, if we're going to step a ladder, let's not have it go too aggressive.
So I can tell you 1,500 at 5% compounded, 1,500 a month turns into 1,900 a month, 1,914 in 5 years.
Yeah, that's a big jump.
Significant. Yeah, it's a big jump, especially because it's compounded.
Right. Mary?
Yeah, I just wanted to throw out there that these are, like, I'm not saying that anything that you don't already know, but these are people that have been renting affordably for, in some cases, like a really, really long time, like 10, 15, 20 years. And I think that increase of 5% isn't all that high, really, given what they've been contributing to the community in terms of renting out to people year round at such a lower rate than what is the market rate. That's
Well,
all.
I think your point is salient to me that the landlords that are offering, stabilized rents for 10, 15 years is different than landlords who may come in that are on year 2, 3, but qualify for the program and see increases of what Penny just pointed out. Sounds almost like a 25% or a 20% increase over the 5 years, which is a lot, right? $400 a month on a $1,500 a month starting rent is a lot of money. So if we want to be cautious about those changes, I think that's important. Dylan?
I just want to say I'm not advocating one way or the other for the increase. I think this is exactly why we're bringing it to you guys to get your feedback on the percentage. I will just say that though that the program is just right now as it's structured would just be an incentive over 3 years, not a full 5.
Right. Okay. Well, I think this is on this aspect, you have enough information based on this part of the conversation to thoughtfully weigh that percentage. Is it a CPI tracking 3.5? Is it, federal funds rate +1? Is it what becomes the metric? There's a whole bunch of different ones we can pick. 5 may be arbitrary based on marketplace. So go ahead, Dylan.
Well, so I mean, and going back to speaking with the folks at PlaceMate, am I correct in thinking that it sounds like we, find a lower threshold based on one of those standards that you're saying, but to go through with the review process as Christy laid out?
At least 2 of the members, I'll speak for myself and Penny. I think the answer is yes. The others, open to feedback.
Through you, Chair Sullivan, maybe I could ask
Yeah,
if that
go for
makes sense. With the review process, does that make sense since you expressed your concerns about the lower percent threshold?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Fantastic. Okay. So then with that, I wanted to walk us through a few budget scenarios to get feedback on what the trust's appetite is in terms of spending. So this is a chart that PlaceMate put together for us. As you can see at the top, each one is progressively more units that would be preserved. So it's based on the idea that the incentive would be $6,000 per year per unit. So up to $18,000 per unit. And you can see that as it progresses, be 30% paid year 1, half of that coming at year 0 in year 1, and then what we've talked about in terms of the stepped increase. And then at the bottom, you can see the cost over 3 years. So if you did 20 units, it'd be $360,000. All the way up to 50 units would be $900,000. And these are the estimates for the number of people housed. The caveat being that these numbers do not include the administrative fee. So Colin estimated that it would be about 20 to 25% on top of these numbers. So that's really the question that I wanted to bring forward to you all is, one, does $6,000 a year per unit make sense as a threshold? And how many units are we interested in converting at this price?
So personally, I can't answer the first 2 questions until I have a better understanding of what the cost of 360,000, 547, 20, and 900 is in. These are cash dollars. They can't be bonded, if I understand that correctly. And so what is the value of $900,000 bonded equate to if we were to make a purchase on a deed restriction? So this program, in my mind, doesn't have a restriction that lasts longer than a 3-year window. And I'd just like to understand the cost of that, the opportunity cost on something else based on bonded dollars.
And if I can respond. You know, the other consideration that we've been talking about is obviously that the more work that we do and the more of the bonded funds that we use, the more of the override needs to be available to use for debt service on that. So even if we have a pot of money available now, that's the consideration, right? So I mean, I don't necessarily have an answer, and not to put Chrissy on the spot, but maybe she has a better sense of an answer to your question, but just to add something there.
Through
Go ahead,
your
Christy.
Chair Sullivan, I would have to have Brian Turbot do a specific analysis on what the 900,000 cash could do in terms of borrowing. Right now, the $6.5 million total override we have, the purpose of it is to be able to issue debt, and we currently have a authorization from town meeting to borrow up to $45 million. And once we reach that 45 million, then we would be using the override to service it.
Can you say that at the end of that one more time?
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah, so right now we have not borrowed any of the $45 million that was authorized at the 2024 annual town meeting. When we do start borrowing over time, and once we've borrowed the entirety of the 45 million, we will need the cash override to service the debt. The annual debt payments will come out of that. So right now we have some more flexibility to do some of these short-term programs like lease to locals and rooted renters, but eventually, as other projects come down the pike, we would most likely not have as much flexibility with the cash because we'd be using it to service our debt.
Yeah, so the things I just want to be cautious about opportunity cost. And looking at the financial statement that was circulated before, we've spent 82 or 52% of the money. You make the point about the 45 that hasn't been bonded yet that will potentially have access, but the line available funds 30 million today. I guess I'll come back to you with a follow-up question on the previous financial statement. How long has it taken us historically looking back from today to spend $30 million? So did we spend 30 million in the last 8 months, 15 months, 24 months? And I just want to pause and kind of have a real level of comfort. $30 million sounds like a lot of money, but I know we've had some awesome opportunities in front of us, like Tacoma Green, like Sparks Ave, like that got us a really high in perpetuity deed restriction. I want to be considerate of that. Because once we're through that 30, we're done until the transfer fee happens, basically. And so with that statement, I'll go back to your first question. $6,000 sounds like a nice subsidy. And would I like to do 20, 30, 40, 50 units? Yes, absolutely. But in a vacuum of understanding the other information, I don't personally feel comfortable voting. Dylan?
So I think we're not necessarily looking for a vote today. This would just be for me to go back to Colin and say to them, this is sort of the trust's comfort, and we'd continue to put together the program guardrails and guidelines given that threshold. And then we would come to the trust for a vote. I think that what I'll just say is I hear everything you're saying and I agree with what you're saying. I think that this program, though, would potentially fill, I think as it could fill an important gap as we wait for projects to come online for people to actually be able to get into affordable housing. And I think also as we're thinking about what are the costs of doing something like a year-round rental registry where over occupancy is then addressed and people might be out of housing, this could sort of address some of that.
I appreciate that. Do we have going back to a previous item, the RFP that will be reissued and opened up, and you kind of gave us a summary. If those funds are all expended, do we have a plan to re-release Pilot 2.0? And then what will that funding be? Because those are purchases And in what time period would those be? Because those are perpetual deed restrictions. And I just want to understand if we're budgeting those into a future conversation. Like both of them I consider goodwill programs in the community. But the rooted renters is in an existence happening. My point being that like people are doing this and they're choosing to do this for a variety of reasons, meaning renting affordably to people today.
So I'll
Go
I
ahead.
think
First Dylan, then Christy.
I think Chrissy will address the first half of the question. I'll just say that I think anecdotally we hear in the housing department from people who are doing this and asking, like, you have these programs that convert people to year-round affordable rentals, but I've been doing this and it's stressing me financially. So is there something that I can apply for? So I think that would be my response to the second half.
Okay. Christy?
Thank you. Just to kind of piggyback off of that, like one of the distinctions here is like, as Dylan was saying, lease to locals is a conversion of units of trying to get underutilized houses available year round. And this is more of a preservation program to keep existing units to continue to rent. So people don't either convert or sell their home or, decide to change out of a 12-month lease. And we've been exploring all different ways of how do you preserve existing rentals so that we don't lose our already like naturally occurring affordable housing. And so this is just one program similar to good landlord tax exemption and others that we're looking at to, lack of a better word, stop the bleeding, stop the loss of our natural occurring year-round housing. In terms of a deed restriction pilot program 2.0, the idea was that this pilot program would be released and we kind of would gather information on people who've applied, what works about the program, what doesn't, and then also look at how the seasonal communities legislation and regulations are developing around having a deed restriction without an AMI restriction. So I would say that's probably more of like a 2027 goal to release this as an ongoing basis. In our anticipated future needs, we do keep an additional $2 million for a future pilot or non-pilot deed restriction program.
Okay, great. Thank you. Other members with comments or questions for Dylan to be able to go back to PlaceMate? Dylan, do you have follow-up questions? Oh, Penny just took her mic off. Go ahead, Penny.
I want to sort of hop on to something you said, Brian, which is in terms of arbitrarily picking a number of units, we're not going to know. This is similar, I think, to the deed restriction program in that we're not going to know until we put this out there what the response will be. So I could see down the line saying not to exceed, I mean, again, thinking pilot program, a certain number of units, but I sort of hate to lock us into something this first year.
I think that the survey that made it out to a number, like who knows, how wide the breadth of the survey was, came back with potentially 30 units. So where it was, I'm going off memory. 29, close enough. So very like 29 plus the 14.
That feels about right, but that's just intuition, nothing quantifiable.
Right. Go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah, so I think, this is why they conducted the survey to kind of get at this question. I think they had over, they spoke to it at the December 2nd meeting, but I think they had over 100 responses and I think just under 50 qualified after all of the, sort of draft guardrails came out. And so, we can dive more into the survey results or go back and look at those. But yeah, I think 30 is sort of the number that we have been operating at as the standard. But I think the other way, whereas like with the good landlord tax exemption, we don't know what the interest would be. I think one thing that might be helpful for the trust, I think part of why we're bringing this forward is that given the cost considerations, that I think is also a guiding factor in a way that it wasn't really for the good landlord tax exemption. That can maybe guide what you're telling me to go back to Colin to think about is like what, so if $360,000 is the cost for the incentives for 20 units, then there is a $72,000 at least administrative fee on top of that. So you're really talking closer to $430,000 total. So, and then obviously that increases. So, feedback on whether or not that, you think we should talk to Colin about the percentage of the administrative fee being too high would be helpful. And, your appetite there as well.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Brooke, hey.
Hey, how are you guys? Sorry I was late.
Good. No, welcome.
Yeah, I'm curious about the administrative fee. I think we are going to have to explain it. So understanding like what is involved in terms of the workflow and the time spent on this program is helpful. When we contract out work, right? Having a way to explain why that percentage makes sense, because we will be asked. So I would like some more details on that. And, I'm sort of inclined to, 20 to 30 is sort of the number where my gut is on this. And I think in terms of looking at our overall budget over time and at not making sure we're not constraining ourselves to being able to engage in projects that have long-term deed restrictions under a borrowing scenario, make sure we're not constraining those override funds too much and too long-term. So to your point earlier, so those are sort of my initial reactions.
Thank you, Brooke. Go ahead, Dylan.
Well, I don't want to cut anybody out, any other trust member out that they were going to add on, but I think maybe what I'm hearing is that I should go back to Colin and say, can you put together guidelines based on 20 and 30 and be prepared to speak to why the administrative cost is what it is and what the workflow will look like on your end, and have them bring that forward to the next trust meeting, and we can go from there.
Yeah,
sounds reasonable.
Sorry, one other thought. Do more units bring the per unit administrative cost down? So are there sort of things that are the same no matter how many units we do versus the workflow for each individual unit? Does that question make sense?
Yeah,
it does.
Economy of scale.
Yeah, there's the phrase I was looking for. Thanks.
Yep.
So through you, Chair Sullivan, I'm sorry, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but the answer is yes. The structure is that there is a monthly administrative fee, and then there's an administrative fee per unit. The per unit fee would go down. I don't think it would go down so significantly that it would change, your thought would change based on what I'm hearing today, would change the trust's feeling on just the sheer amount of money spent up front, or sheer amount of total money spent for more units. But the answer is yes, there is a economy of scale.
Okay, great. I think, Dylan, I think we can move on from this item at this point. I think you know what you need to know to go back to them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, so coming back to the agenda, other business, next meeting scheduled for January 6th, 12:30 hybrid, January 20th, 12:30 hybrid. Looks like that's the end of that. I'll look for a motion to adjourn regular session, not to return to regular session for the purpose of executive session to discuss purchase, exchange, lease, or real value of property that the open session could be detrimental. Someone like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Penny. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mary. By roll call, Forrest Bell,
Aye.
Mary Mack,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
Brooke Moore.
Aye.
Did we lose Abby? I don't see her on my screen.
Abby dropped a little while ago.
Okay. And Brian Sullivan's an aye. See you there.